Welcome to Real Life Regulators. Today's episode is part two of a three-part series titled Hatching from the Egg to Creating Your Own Nest Egg. This part will focus on the sandwich generation. These are the adults that are caring for young kids, older parents, and themselves. During this episode, we will discuss common pitfalls, misconceptions, and the schemes and scams that this generation faces regarding their finances and their future.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Real Life Regulators. This podcast series is brought to you by the North American Security Administrators Association, better known as NASA. That's NASAA for those of you who just pictured the Space Institute instead. During each episode, we typically review different cases and discuss what went wrong, how you can identify the red flags of securities fraud, and what you can do in the future to protect yourself and your loved ones from a similar situation. Today's episode is part two of a three-part series titled Hatching from the Egg to Creating Your Own Nest Egg. In this episode, we will review the current state of America's retirement funds, how important investing is when it comes to retirement, and the stresses of the sandwich generation, those responsible for themselves, their children, and their parents. I'm your host, Rachel Carden, and I'm the Director of Investor Education for the State of Tennessee's Securities Division. Joining me today is my co-host, Jeremy Lushane. Jeremy, please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about today's very special guest.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jeremy Lushane with the Washington State Department of Financial Institutions, and I'm excited to welcome to this podcast Lori Schock, who is from the United States Securities and Exchange Commission. Lori is Director of the Office of Investor Education and Advocacy. She was appointed to this role in 2009. Previously, she was Associate Director of FINRA's Investor Education Foundation and Office of Investor Education. Before that, she was Director of Outreach at the Center for Audit Quality. Lori received her law degree and Master's of Taxation from the University of Akron and holds a bachelor's from Furman University. Lori, welcome. We are so glad you could join us today.
Hey, Jeremy, it's great to be here. As you know, I'm from the federal government, and I've got to give you a disclaimer before I get started. So the views I express here today are mine and mine alone and don't necessarily represent those of the SEC staff or commissioners. But with that said, happy to be here.
Okay, let's dive right in. We all know how important it is to be prepared for retirement, yet when that discussion happens, it usually centered around how ill-prepared people are for retirement. So we went out and did a little research. Turns out the data shows that it's not quite the bleak landscape that the media might have you believe. In fact, according to a 2022 Federal Reserve study, almost 3/4 of non-retired adults have at least some retirement savings. However, 28% reported not having any. It seems Americans do have some retirement savings, but we could be doing a better job. Lori, why does retirement seem so scary to so many people?
You know, I think this is one of those things, Jeremy, where people know they need to save for retirement. That's not new news for folks. However, the ability to do it, I think, is where it's challenging for people. The rules changed in the mid-'80s when we went from pension plans in the United States, and that's where someone worked for a company, saved for their entire career, and then the company paid them in retirement, and that money took care of them and their family. Those rules changed when we went from self-contribution plans, otherwise known as 401k plans or 403b plans, or if you work for a state, it's maybe a 457, or for the federal government, it's the thrift savings plan. And so people know they need to save this money. However, there are a lot of other things that are pulling at that income that they have. And so for some, I think it's just a lack of, there aren't any resources left at the end of the month. The paycheck only goes so far. Now, for others, there may be a lack of knowledge that, hey, I need to start doing this, or I know I need to do it, I just haven't done it yet. And that delay in planning for retirement really has a long-term implication in the overall amount people are able to save and invest for retirement in the future. So the stats, it's bleak when almost over 25% don't have anything saved. But for those who are saving something, that's a great first step. And, they need to keep that going. And the other part is historically, the best returns have been in the stock market in the United States. The S&P 500 has averaged around 10% on an annualized return. Now, it's not 10% every year like clockwork. Unfortunately, we have these ups and these downs in the markets and those swings, but over time, that's been around the historical average. Whereas, bank accounts are paying more now in interest than they have in the recent decade. But that still isn't going to get you where you need to be in retirement without having the power of compound interest working for you with higher returns. And then for those who just, have cash, but it's not even working in a bank account, they're really going to be hurting because we also have inflation that works. And inflation chips away at the value of that money. A loaf of bread costs more today than it did 10 years ago. Well, in the future, 20 years from now, it's probably going to cost even more. So you need to have, inflation is a big part of this equation as well.
Laura, you mentioned compounding interest and you mentioned long-term implications. So what are those long-term implications of waiting? Why is it so important to start investing today, and how can waiting too long to invest hurt you?
This is the phenomenon of the power of compound interest, and it's one of the greatest things that can help build wealth. However, compound interest can work for you or against you, and let me talk about that a little bit here. The power of compound interest is sort of like a snowball. It starts small, but as you roll it and roll it and roll it, it keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And just think about that as you are putting this money away every month for years, for decades even. So it's not just the money that you're putting into it, but hopefully you have positive returns with it. And then those returns are getting paid interest on top of that as well. That's how it snowballs and gets bigger. So if you delay starting for your retirement, you missed out on those formative years, those foundational years, to help start building that small, snowball and getting it larger and larger. And you find that if people, start investing as soon as they get that first job, just socking away a little bit, as much as they can, but even if it's just a small amount, that really does have a huge impact later on in life. Because again, remember, the goal here is retirement. And it's not just, the day I retire, it's hopefully the decades you also live in retirement. So that's what we're looking for. We are playing the long game here. And when I talked about power of compound interest as it works against you, think about credit cards, okay? Where sometimes, like right now, you may have to pay 24% interest or so. What that means is if you paid nothing on those cards, in 3 years, the amount of debt that you owe just based on that compounded interest would be double what you owe today. And that brings in another rule, the rule of 72. And that is whatever you think your interest rate is, or what your return is, or how much you're paying, either way you're looking at compound interest. If you divide that number into 72, that's how many years it'll take that money to double. So I sort of look at it, how many more doubles do I have left in my life, if you will? Let's say I expect to make 8% a year. Well, every 9 years, it will double. How many more doubles do I have? And to help sort of project, what my future might look like. So that's just one way of looking at it. But, the best time to have started saving for retirement was yesterday. But if you didn't do it then, start today. And if you can't do it today, start tomorrow. This isn't one of those, I've messed it up, so now I'm not going to do anything. That is the worst thing to do. What you want to do now is start getting control of your financial future today and plan for it, where you have that opportunity to have that money grow.
Yeah, debt can be an absolute killer. What can you do if you find yourself in too much debt? Is there help available?
There is help available. And, the first thing you need to do is sort of take a look at your budget. You need to know, what you're spending, where your money is going. And you also need to have a serious conversation with yourself regarding, wants and needs, if you will. So there are certain things we have to live. We need shelter, we need food, we need clothing, we need transportation. However, there are other things that's really nice to have, but it's not something that I truly need. It's something I want. And so, allocating your money to go towards these things. And if you make paying off debt a priority, people have so much just excitement and good feeling of accomplishment when they pay down their debts. It's one of those things that if you don't take control of it, though, it just is always sitting out there and looming in the background and sort of ruining your day. But if you actually can focus on it, prioritize it, take whichever debt you have that has the highest interest rate, put that one at the top, and just start chipping away at it constantly. Now, you can't neglect your other debt. You have to keep making your, at least the minimum payments on that, but make the other one a priority. And maybe instead of going out to dinner tonight, I'm going to use that money I would have spent doing that, chipping this down, because there's no better feeling of accomplishment than when you find yourself being debt-free. You want to talk about the feeling of freedom and having more control in your life is when you don't owe anybody anything. That's a great feeling, and it's something that can be reached. And it's like, I've had people say, well, Lori, I don't have enough money. And it's like, well, what do you have? Well, I work during the week. And it's like, okay. And after those 40 hours, what do you do? Oh, well, I go out with my friends. I do this. I, go to ball games. I spend money is what I'm hearing. And it's like, hey, instead of spending money, you could get another job. You get a side hustle. The gig economy is alive and well. When I was, right out of college, I used to referee on the weekends. So instead of, just going to the ball games, I refereed the ball games or umpired a ball game. There are things that you can do to actually make money and use it to help chip away at this. And so, you have time. So, okay, make that time where it's paying you. Go get a job, another, source of income, turn a hobby into, potential side hustle here. Make that money, pay down the debt, and then, reassess. But it's one of those things. You've got time potentially. See if you can monetize it and start paying it down. You'll never regret paying it down.
We talked earlier about how important it is to start saving and investing early, thanks to compound interest. How can you make investing a priority, even if you're on a limited budget?
Again, this is one of those things. We seem to spend money on things that we truly, what we want to spend money on. Now, there are times, look, when circumstances take over, say there's a medical healthcare crisis, and you get swamped with medical bills or something like that. One, anyone that you owe money to or any organization, work with them to set up a payment plan or see if you can, qualify for a certain program or get a reduction in the amount that you owe. The worst thing, though, is to just sort of stick your head in the sand and not do anything. You want to be proactive and get out in front of it and then, do what you can to make those ends meet. If you're working in a job that, hey, I haven't gotten a raise in a while, is it time to dust off your resume? Is it time to look for, a job that may pay more? Can you work a different shift and get shift differential pay? Like I said earlier, can you work an additional job to bring in other resources? It's not like you're limited to just potentially having only one job. Make use of that time. Make use of hobbies or things where, hey, I like to take pictures. And we have a farmers market thing where people sell pictures. Maybe I could sell some of my pictures, put them in a frame, charge more than what my cost is, make some money. Is it worth my time and effort to do that? Whatever it is, people can be very creative in how they monetize their time and make that additional money. And I realize, it's hard. I'm tired after work. I don't want to necessarily have another job. So you sort of have a couple of options. Either you get paid more for the 40 hours you put in one job, or you take on additional work and, maybe work more hours or have that side hustle. Trying to just make those ends meet. If you're, in a relationship, is your partner working? Is your spouse working? And the same thing goes for them. We're in it together. That's, one good way to, you share expenses. So that's good. Can you take, if you're not in a relationship, but hey, can I take on a roommate where you're sharing those expenses? The cable bill's a set amount, but it's nice if you can share it with someone else. Cell phone plans, same type of thing. Friends and family plan, you get a discount if it's not just your own account. The rent, the mortgage, heating, whatever it is, lowering those expenses however you can. It's like, well, I don't want to have a roommate. Well, these are the challenges and the things, can you live in a cheaper, apartment or a place where it costs less? Those are all things to consider, and it all goes into your budgeting process. And here's the other part when it comes to budgeting or anything, when it comes to finances. What works for you works for you. It's not a one size fits all. Each person is unique in this area, but prioritizing it, making it work, making your budget work for you is just a good start in this area. And getting out from underneath the debt will put you on the path to financial freedom, because then, you're not the one paying the interest, you're the one getting paid the interest. So my 2 cents worth on that.
Great, Lori. You're making me want to have a side gig or a side hustle or something. I'm not saying I'm going to go try for Uber anytime soon, but you're right. There's a lot of opportunities out there, and it's got to work for you. So I love that advice. And talking about inflation, right? That loaf of bread that we know is, 5 times more expensive than it was 20 years ago, and it's going to be more expensive coming into the future. Thanks to inflation, savings, just simply saving, putting money into a savings account at your financial institution is not simply enough to reach our retirement goals, right? We've got to invest, and that's what the research shows. So what are some things that you recommend considering before making those investment decisions?
Sure. Making an investment decision, it's a critical decision you're going to make, and you're going to make it with your money. One thing, money is lazy. Money will only work as hard as you make it work. Okay. So if you've got cash at home and it just sits underneath your mattress, that's all it's going to be. When you take it out, that $20 is still $20. If you put it into a bank account, and you have to pay attention to this, because look, all bank accounts are not created equal. I'll be honest, my checking account barely pays, I don't think it even pays 1% interest right now. However, I've got an online savings account that's paying 5%. That's a huge difference between, that's a 4% difference just in banking products, just based on, did I take the time to go open up the online account to move money from the checking account to get into this other one that pays more, and it's 4% more, 400% more than what I'm currently making. And like I said, that's just a banking product. So when it comes to investing, you need to make sure, one, you understand the fees associated with it. All investments are going to have fees. Those fees will chip away at your returns. Okay. So it's like, Lori, I've got inflation chipping away at my returns. Now I've got, fees chipping away at my returns. This is a lot. It is a lot. But guess what? It's pretty simple when you just sort of think about it. hey, I got to pay the piper here and, plan for future expenses there. So let's just talk about those fees. On investor.gov, which is the SEC's retail-facing website, so for retail investors, go to investor.gov. I've got a piece there that shows you the impact of fees over time. And I'm not talking like the difference between what I just said, 1% to 5%. I'm talking less than a percentage difference, okay? But that impact of fees over time, when you're looking at regularly investing money with sort of this normalized return, ends up becoming hundreds of thousands of dollars in difference. And that's money that could be in your pocket instead of the firm's pocket, just based on shopping around. Because, like I said, all investments are going to have fees. So you need to look at that when you look at your investments. An example for some cost-effective types of investments. If you're investing on a regular basis, there are mutual funds, but you want to look at the fees for those. A lot of the companies will allow you to invest smaller amounts at the beginning and throughout on a regular basis. But again, check out the fees that will be disclosed to you. But what looks like, 1% is not that much. What if you could get the exact same fund investing in the exact same stocks at 0.25%, a quarter of a percent? Well, then that other 0.75% ends up in your pocket as returns. And, here's something else people, may not consider when they're investing is there are times when the stock market moves against you. Guess what? You're still paying fees even if the stock market moves against you. So that's just something to consider. So look at the impact of those fees over time. Now, if you have a lump sum, you've got an inheritance or something like that, and so you have a larger amount that you want to invest in one fell swoop. That may be better off maybe put into what's called an ETF, an exchange traded fund. They're similar to mutual funds, but the fee structure is different. Generally, you pay a commission to get into it. There may be ongoing fees as well, but it's made, it may be more cost effective. Also, you control the taxes of when you pay capital gains for it is when you sell the product. Whereas mutual funds have a little bit of a different tax treatment. Just something to consider. And these are two very common products that are utilized by retail investors. They're also, commonly found in retirement accounts. And while we're talking about retirement accounts, if you work for a company or the government or nonprofit, they may have a match for your retirement savings that you're putting away, those investments you put away on a monthly basis. I implore you to do everything in your power to get that match. It is the only time I get to say you have a guaranteed return. Okay? And the reason is that's free money. And you can't, I didn't do it for the first 10 years I worked there, but I was able to put more money away later. You don't get to make up those previous 10 years of matches. So this is a huge one for people, especially, people starting out in that first job. It's like, what do you mean? It's like, if you put in 8% of your pay, your company may match 50% of that. That means they're giving you 4% free. That's part of your benefit. That's money on the table. Look at it as, that's your bonus. Don't leave that money just sitting there. Take full advantage if you can do that. Make that your priority because that is free money. That is a guaranteed return. Working for the federal government, I'll be honest, and working at the SEC, we're very fortunate. If I put in 8%, I get an 8% match, dollar for dollar for 8%. That's huge. That's huge.
Amazing.
That's amazing.
And one of the things that I always encourage younger investors, so 8% of your check sounds like a lot, especially if you're just starting out and you have lots of bills or other things that you're trying to save for. And so what I advise younger investors is, okay, well, what can you afford? Can you afford 2 or 3 in the beginning? Do that. And then every year when it's time to review taxes, bump it up by 1%. 1% is not as painful as 8, and you keep bumping it up as much as you can afford a little over time until eventually you are meeting that full max. It may have not been on the front end, but instead of doing 0, you're doing something, right? And you're trying to get to that maximum goal of that 8 or however much your employer matches.
And Rachel, you make a really good point here. Here's the other thing. Guess what? When you sort of get in the groove of budgeting and your expenses and stuff, you don't miss it. That's the glorious part about it. You just don't miss it. And make it the priority. Pay yourself first. You're worth it. And look, I'll be honest with you. I am speaking from experience here. I had some credit cards going into college. I can't tell you how much those pizzas ended up costing me down the road. I thought, I'll use those credit cards. It'll be fine. And then I'll get a really good paying job right out of college and pay those off, the first week. It didn't quite work out that way. I paid on those pizzas for a long time, but I finally got out of it. But it took a while. And same thing, student loans, car payments, car expenses. They're there. It happens. Life happens. But with some due diligence and planning, you can get out of it. But saving and investing for your retirement, getting that employer's match is just huge. Make that a priority.
Yes, I totally agree. It's something I wish I could go back and tell my younger self. And so when you said you're speaking from experience, I can completely relate to that as well. So let's switch gears now. Okay, let's talk about that sandwich generation we mentioned earlier. So those are the folks who are not only caring for themselves and their own finances, but they're caring for their children. They're trying to teach their children the importance of healthy financial habits. And they're caring for aging parents, and perhaps those aging parents need assistance managing their own finances. Like it's a lot, right? And research shows that the folks who fall into that category experience high amounts of stress naturally, which translates to their finances. And to top it all off, they've got to ensure that they have awareness of all the current frauds and schemes that are targeted at not only their finances, but their children's and their parents as well. So it's a loaded question, but Lori, what do we do? Where do we start?
Let's all just take a deep breath. First of all, cleansing breath here, okay? It is a lot. So let's look at prioritizing things here. All right. You've got children who, let's talk about the kids. Okay. They're, again, basic necessities, things you got to take care of. That's a priority. You got to take care of yourself, of course, because if you don't, then you're the breadwinner here. The whole, thing can fall apart. So you got to take care of yourself. And then you've got your parents. All right. And you need to help take care of them. But let's look at some places where I have seen some challenges with folks. All right. One is if your children are adult children, okay, they need to have jobs. They need to maybe take out student loans for college or for school. This is, again, prioritization. You can't take out a loan for your retirement. So you've got to take care of yourself and take care of your, business here. Otherwise, no one's going to be able to help you later on. So for the parents who are taking out student loans for their kids, and I've seen it where they're taking the loans out in their names, I just have to say, I don't think that's usually the best idea. There are other educations, maybe education needs to be put off. Maybe there are programs, scholarships and things, work study programs, or the child can take student loans. All right. So that's a big one. Taking care of yourself, making sure your retirement plan is on track has to be, that priority there for you. When it comes to your parents now, look, they spent, years in their lives taking care of you. I know my parents did with me. I want to help them at this stage and age in their lives. I'm living this myself. So what do we do? First of all, you need to have a frank conversation. Where are they with their financial life? And this may or may not be easy depending on family and their relationship with money and how frank and comfortable they feel about talking about it, especially with their kids. And it doesn't matter, if your kid went off to college and law school and has a master's in taxation and works at the SEC, it wasn't an easy discussion the first time we had it. To be quite honest with you, it's sort of one of those things. So I expect everyone is probably in the same boat here, but you need to have that discussion. Especially as we age, life happens. And we just need to be prepared for it. And families are so much better prepared if they've had this discussion. So talking about finances, making sure that your folks are in a financial position where they're comfortable and confident is so important. And then if you have, say the death of a parent, that's when, I hate to say it, rubber sort of hit the road for my family at least. Because then it's like, okay, Mom, let's talk about where you are. The implications of, they both had Social Security coming in. Well, after the death of one parent, now or spouse, you only have one income or one Social Security check coming in. There was a pension. The pension was cut in half. Okay. Your housing expenses and living expenses generally are pretty static. Okay, maybe a little bit less with food, but heating and cooling the house and paying taxes and things were pretty consistent. So those are things you just need to be prepared for. And the more that you have that conversation and just sort of have a touch base and touchstone and know where your folks are, it just helps. We talked about stress in the beginning. Being in control sort of helps de-stress that situation. And to be honest with you, I think, at least with my family, it was a bit of a relief. Okay, now I can share this with someone else. So my brother and I, both were there with my mom and had this conversation. And, she's still in control of her stuff. But if she has questions, she knows she has, 2 kids to go and talk to. It was interesting when we sat down with her at the bank after my dad died. They took her in a room by herself to talk to her about this. I have to say, it sort of chafed me a little. I knew it was the right thing, and I do know it's the right thing. And the reason is because of financial exploitation. And unfortunately, some of those who are guilty of this most are family members, where they take advantage of an older relative. They're thinking, well, I'm going to inherit it anyhow. And it's like, yeah, but it's not yours. Today, it's theirs. And it may not be yours ever, because they can always change their mind on who gets this. So I knew it was the right thing for the banker to take Mom in by herself to just make sure that, we weren't putting her under any undue influence. But like I said, for all the work I do with, elder abuse and financial abuse, it was like, but I'm one of the good guys. And it's like, it's interesting what money does to people, because, we want, are you the good daughter or the bad daughter? And it's like, what do you mean? No, we're only good kids in our family. Well, maybe not.
You're so right. It's always something.
But, this is one of the reasons why we want people to name, say, a trusted contact. Okay. So with your investment accounts, you can name a trusted contact. This gives the firm the ability to reach out to this person if they can't get a hold of you. All right. And it gives them the ability to pause a transaction or a disbursement if they can't get a hold of you, or if they think, hey, something's a little bit off. Like you seem more forgetful than normal, and they just want to validate, hey, are you sure you want to wire this money offshore? You've never done a wire transfer in the 30 years that you've been, working with us, but now you want to wire money offshore? That doesn't seem right. And so before there's a question of incapacity or, they can't get a hold of you because you decided you're going to take a world cruise, you've named someone that you trust. They can't make financial decisions for you. They can't take money out of your account. They can't change how your accounts are invested. But what they can do is say, oh, yeah, hey, Lori actually had a brain injury last year, and she's had some challenges. I think we need to talk about this and talk about it more. Please don't make that transaction, and it gives the firm that ability. So I encourage everybody, regardless of age, to add a trusted contact. I know I recently did my own. And it's a good planning tool. And hey, look, should something happen to me, I want them to, talk to someone. I work too hard to have this money be taken by a scam artist. And we're seeing that way too often. You asked about how to protect against frauds. They are pounding our seniors. It's not that seniors are taken advantage of more often. It's just when they are hounded, daily, online, over the phone, in person, even playing games, online games that people like to do. What starts off as, oh, no, that was a really good move, and words with friends, then turns into more chatting, more whatever. And they're pretty persistent when it comes to trying to do this. And we've just seen so many different horrible scams. And unfortunately, when it does impact a senior or an older American, it has a tendency to be for a lot more money than it does when younger people are taken advantage of. So we can talk more about that if you'd like.
Yeah, what are some of the things that we should be watching out for with our parents?
Everyone. Let's just talk about everyone online. A couple different things. One, we're all online all the time now. Our phones go with us everywhere. People can access their investment accounts just so easily through an app. Folks are doing it too. So my mom's 86. She's on her iPhone. She's on her laptop. She's on an iPad. She's out there. So what does that mean? That means you've got to make sure you have, two-factor authentication for your accounts. Making sure that if you use antivirus software, but also be sure, like I said, where someone's trying to develop a relationship with you. These are the big ones. These are, they've got some, they're known as romance scams. Some call them pig butchering scams. I don't like that term myself, but, you get fattened up for the kill, if you will. And this is something where, like I said, it could start, just as innocuous as chatting, or someone who wants to then go offline from whatever a dating app or something. They want to go onto WhatsApp and then have this conversation develop, and then, it could lead to, say, a crypto fraud type thing. We've seen it where people get talked into buying gift cards. And you essentially are giving them the numbers and the pins, and they get the cash from that. Offshore wire transfers are a huge one, and they're smart. There's a reason why they're doing things the way they do it. They know it's much more difficult when things go offshore to have any type of recovery. And like a romance scam doesn't just happen, quickly. This is one where they spend a lot of time, a lot of energy, they really do develop that relationship. However, it's all based on false promises. And, once they set in, and it's not going to be, hey, I need money. It's my child needs to have surgery, and I would have that money, except it's tied up in this other thing. And then because you like this new person and you've been talking to them maybe even for months now, well, I can help you with that. Oh, it would just be a loan. It would just be a loan. I'll pay you back. Da, da, da. Well, then once the money is sent, they usually come back with another reason why they need more money. But eventually, once you sort of, wise up to that, then all of a sudden you can't get a hold of them and they're gone. So it's a bad situation all the way around. It's hard to know who you're dealing with online. That makes it difficult. Fake pictures, fake, the whole setup of who they are. You may not know who they are. You may think you're speaking to, a 45-year-old woman over in Europe, and you're talking to, a 56-year-old man who's posing to be her. You just don't know. So those are some of the challenges that we face.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons that cryptocurrency is so risky, right? You don't know who you're dealing with when you're online, but let's not go there because that's a whole different podcast.
Well, and sometimes it's not cryptocurrency, but it's the lure. They say it's crypto, or they say,
right.
And so people are, they read the headlines and they don't quite know what it is, but that's what you're using for the hook. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So we touched on adult children and some of the things that we can kind of help coach them to do as part of the family unit. But, what about the younger kids? How can we teach our children those solid financial habits that they can carry with them as they grow and get to that adult who's ready to invest?
Sure. I'm a big believer in having kids work for their money for a certain extent. So like having an allowance, but not just an allowance for being there, like doing something, doing chores, earning that money. Because once you have an appreciation for, okay, if I clean the bathroom and get paid $1, what toy, what pair of shoes, what is it I want to buy? Is that worth 100 hours worth of cleaning the toilet? That's where I think they need to start developing the value of money, and also your time and effort it takes to earn that money. It really helps young people start to appreciate the difference between needs and wants. This pair of tennis shoes, well, I can go running in them and do what I need to do in them. They cost $50. Well, this pair over here costs $100. Is it really $50 better than the other? I don't know. Maybe it is. Maybe that's something, and it is worth. But I want people and I want kids to know the effort that goes into that. Not just to be the ATM of mom and dad. I think that part is so important for children to learn. Needs and wants. I also think it's important for them to learn to share. Setting some aside, quite frankly, sort of for giving to others. But that's another discussion. But let's talk about now earning money, needs and wants. And then, delayed gratification, I think, is another important aspect. So it's, okay, what if I don't spend it all today? Yeah, because it's like, no, I'm going to save it. And what are you saving it for? Well, I'm saving it for whatever the future is. Or I'm saving it because I want to buy a dirt bike. That's what I want. I live in Indiana. I want a dirt bike. We've got some land. I'm working to save my money for my dirt bike. Okay. what do you have to do to get that money to buy the dirt bike? Well, I need to do more than, I can't clean the toilet every day and get paid for it, but can I mow the grass? Can I babysit? Are there other ways to sort of earn that money? How about when you have a windfall? You get money at the holidays, or you get money for your birthday. Do you just go out and blow it? Or do you start to save it? And I think there are things parents can do in talking with their kids to get them interested in that delayed gratification, but also, let's start young. If the money sits in their piggy bank at home, they're just going to have what's in the piggy bank. Can you open up a bank account and, with your child, and where they can see, this is where I take my money and maybe it grows a little bit? Or how about an investing account? Is there, and what do you invest in? Maybe it's the type of thing you invest in something your child knows, whether it's a favorite store or a favorite product or a favorite restaurant. Buy a share of stock. I know some families they'll buy a share of Walt Disney World because Disney stock, because, that's the place I want to go to. Okay. But something that the child is interested in. And then you start talking and having these conversations about the power of compound interest, and how that money can grow over time. And kids get it. They're little sponges. And I've never met a child who wasn't interested in money because they knew money then was the gateway to getting something. Whether it was something they wanted to eat, something they wanted to drink, a party they wanted to have, or a toy, whatever it is. And then the other part is Aunt Lori used to do gifts of stock. That was my thing, probably not surprising, but I figured one year it was SpongeBob SquarePants was the big thing. And I didn't know what that was, and I didn't really, I had figured out what it was, but I thought, you know what? I bet this share of stock will be appreciated a lot more 10 years from now than SpongeBob will be. And an amazing thing happened when my niece graduated from high school. She had some substantial funds for college and for starting off that future. So I think that's a conversation, for not only parents, but also grandparents. And grandparents are really good at this because, look, they're usually, in retirement or getting ready for retirement. And so for kids to see that this is sort of the successful pathway to retirement, you spend your money, you save your money, you invest wisely, you stay within your budget, and then you get to do all the fun stuff that grandma and grandpa get to do. And kids see that, and it's like, what? How come we're not always on vacation like they are? It's like, well, they're not on vacation, they're just retired. Looks like they're on vacation to me, So, kids use role models, and I think it's one of those things. Talk to them about it, pique their interest in it, and then get them engaged. And they'll be smarter consumers and better investors because of it.
I love that. I got to tell you, in all the years that I've been doing this, I've not heard the pick a stock of something that they're interested in. So I am going to take that tidbit for myself.
Perfect.
Lori, for a new investor, this might all seem a little bit, overwhelming or complicated. What are some resources out there to learn more about investing and maybe some of the products available?
Hey, Jeremy, I work at the SEC, so I'm going to do a little plug here for investor.gov. We have cradle to grave sort of information for all investors at any stage and age. And so regardless of where you are, if you're a new investor just starting out, or if you've been doing this for a while, or if you're getting ready to go into retirement, some things that you need to be aware of, please go to investor.gov. We have information there that will talk about sort of what I call the main three things when it comes to investing, being aware of fraud, fees, and risk, and knowing sort of how you manage all of those. We also have resources available for, different cohorts of, age. So younger investors, older investors, specifically for those who are in certain communities. We have, information for those in the military, those who are just starting out, those who are teachers. So don't have enough time here today to talk about all the different resources, but I just wanted to make that available. And then also, we put out investor alerts and bulletins. In fact, one of our most recent alerts was one on artificial intelligence that you might have been hearing a lot about in the news. This was one that we did jointly with NASA and with FINRA. And it's just, as regulators, this is something it's new. We want people to know what it is, how it's being used, and then how it also may be misused, so that people are aware of this. And that's a big role that we play, is raising that level of awareness. So go to investor.gov. Please check out our investor alerts and bulletins. And if you have any questions, you can also contact us. You can contact us at help@sec.gov, or you can give us a call at 1-800-732-0330. My investor assistant specialists and attorneys handle about 30,000 investor complaints and questions on an annual basis. So if you have a question, please ask before you turn over your hard-earned money. We can't give you investment advice, but I think we can probably point you towards some resources that might be helpful.
Lori, this was so much great information. As we wrap up today's episode, what final thoughts or tips would you like to leave with our listeners?
The first thing and the last thing, please visit us at investor.gov. We do have a lot of information available, and we're just trying to always make sure people use that as one of the tools in their toolkit when they start their journey for saving and investing wisely. We know that an educated investor is our best defense against investment fraud. And also, if you see something in your community, please don't just keep that to yourself. Please let us know about it, or let your state securities regulator know about it, because if you're seeing it, that means thousands of other people are seeing it as well. And we do not want people to lose their hard-earned money to investment fraud. So if you see something, please say something so that we can follow up on it.
That's great. And I love doing these because, as I mentioned earlier, I always learn a little bit when I get to do an episode or be part of one. So I just wanted to say thank you, Lori. Thank you, Jeremy. Appreciate you guys being here today. And to all of our listeners, thank you for joining us for today's episode of Hatching from the Egg to Creating Your Own Nest Egg. Being an informed investor means having a plan and understanding each of your investments. Whether you're new to investing or already investing, NASA and its members provide a variety of online investor education resources for investors of all ages. If you need information on investing or need to check the background of someone making an investment offer, simply visit nasa.org. That's NASAA.org. Click the Contact Your Regulator tab in the top right corner, and then select your jurisdiction's regulator using the map tool. Thank you again for joining us. Most importantly, thank you, Jeremy. Thank you, Lori, for all the work that you each do to protect investors every day. That's all for today's episode. From Nashville, Tennessee, I'm Rachel Carden.
And from Washington State, I'm Jeremy Lechine. If you have any questions about today's podcast, or if you would like more information about the topics discussed, please email us at realliferegulators@gmail.com. That's realliferegulators, all one word, @gmail.com. If you'd like to hear more episodes, please hit the subscribe button.